Right, now we're recording and we're live. And thank you everyone for joining the webinar. I'm Alex from Let's Go Zero. We're really excited to have lots of people join us today at the webinar and people watching the recording as well. We've got a really fantastic audience and we've got a really good group of people here to speak to you today. So I'm going to pass straight on over to Suzanne, my colleague, who's going to introduce our speakers and tell us who's going to speak to us, and then I'll tell you a bit more about Let's Go Zero for those who don't know about it.
Amazing, thanks Alex. Really great to have everyone here, and for those who couldn't make it watching again. So our Let's Go Zero webinar today will focus on energy, and it's really important at the moment that we adopt energy saving measures and transition to a zero carbon future. It's in our lives, at home, in our families, as well as in schools. So it's really sort of prominent now that we move away from fossil fuels. So I hope this webinar for you guys is really useful and you go away with new ideas that you can steal from our two speakers that are presenting today. But just before we start, I will sort of give an overview of what other schools are doing around the country, so hopefully you can nab some of their ideas as well. We want to create this sort of learning environment to support each other. So please do feel free to ask questions by typing in the Q&A box, and Alex will be monitoring that, and we'll have time available to ask questions as we go along. So as I mentioned, we're here going to hear from two different schools about the journey that they've been on, how they can have implemented energy saving measures and sort of installed solar panels and that kind of thing. But if you go on to the next slide, please, Alex. So just before we start, I wanted to highlight some other steps schools have taken across the UK. So here on the slide, you can see students from King's Academy standing in front of some solar panels that were installed via a community funded scheme. So not SALEX, as quite a few people know about, but a completely different route of installing solar panels. And their solar panels cover about 30% of their electricity during the winter, but then over 100% in their sunnier days and in the sunnier months. Next slide, please. And then here, you know, a less money intensive way of saving energy, which we can see students from South Molton Primary, and they have no electricity days once a term, where they take the students outside and you can see them growing vegetables or having an assembly on the lawn and really reconnecting with nature, but also saving that energy one day a week or one day a term where they're not using PowerPoints and doing indoor classes. Next one, please. So yeah, there's loads of different measures that schools can implement, and it's all about empowering your students and teachers, from sort of eco teams who go around the school making sure things are turned off when they're not being used, to, you know, creating posters that our student on the right here has done through raising awareness, and to staff looking at their own energy usage, which you can see on the left, where they sort of monitor when the heating's been on and off to make sure that there's no wastage going on within the school. And also local authorities can support the school, and Leicester City Council provided these leave me on, switch me off little sticker tag things that you can put around the wires, and they really help empower both students and teachers to know what they can and cannot turn off. So there's no mistake that they'll suddenly turn off the whole internet for the whole school and everything will go wrong. It's to, you know, make sure that they know they can turn it will be mostly green ones that they can turn off. But if your local authority doesn't provide these, you can always create your own and encourage the students to take ownership and create little stickers by the plugs for what to turn off and turn on. But there's loads of amazing ideas out there, and hopefully you'll get a few from today. And there's loads of organizations that can support you in making sustainable changes that you need. So I'm going to hand over to two of our guest speakers from two different schools.
So before we do that, we've just got to tell them a little bit about Let's Go Zero before we let our speakers join the stage. So many of the schools watching will be already Let's Go Zero schools, and that's fantastic. And thank you so much for being part of the campaign. but we need lots more schools to sign up. We've got over 1,100 schools now signed up, but really we need as many as we can. So if you're not signed up as a school, please do that. You can do that on our website by clicking join the campaign. And we're really keen to demonstrate the demand that's out there, that we know that's out there within schools across the whole of the UK. We know you want to be leaders, you want to take action. We can really help to show that voice. That means that we can get action from the government, from local authorities, from other schools, from our supply chains, to really help and support and enable all our schools to take action, because it is a challenge. We don't know how we're going to get to zero carbon, but we know that if we collectively work together, we've got a better chance of doing that. So back over to Suzanne, who's now going to introduce our speakers.
Thanks, Alex. So first to speak today, we have Patricia, who, I'm going to switch these round just so I can get the PowerPoint sorted out for Rob. We've got Patricia, who is the school governor at St Edmunds Primary in Maidenhead, and she used to be the head teacher from 2000 to 2001, and then quickly became school governor and aims to ensure the continued focus on sustainability. So Patricia, over to you, please.
Okay, actually I was head teacher till 2021, not 2001. So literally I've just left. I retired last August, but I became a governor quite quickly. And one of the reasons is I did want to keep an eye on what's going on environmentally. So I want to talk about not just energy, but sort of our journey. From 2001, where I attended a World Wildlife Fund conference, and I was shocked when I heard that we in the United Kingdom were using 3 planets worth of resources, and the only reason that we can do that is because we're living off the back of developing world like Afghanistan, who only uses 0.01% of the world's resources. So with that in mind, I came back to school and thought, what can I do? So like most schools, we started off with an eco team, but I quickly realized that wasn't enough because it only hits a few children. So I tried to think of a way of getting it out to the whole school. So I conceived a plan that every year group would have a sustainable doorway. So so year 1 would have food and drink, year 2 travel and traffic, year 3 have energy, year 4 waste, year 5 water, and year 6 global citizenship. And so that way I felt that we were getting out to the whole school and not just a few children. And of course you always have to have, when you've got a carrot, you've always got to have a stick. So to ensure that this all happened, we would have sort of an open day in the summer term where the children, each class would feed to the other children in the school. So they would set up little stalls and so to talk about their learning. So for example, water would get children to walk around the school field with buckets of water to feel what it would be like to be a child in a developing country. So that worked very well. So what meant that by the time children left our school, they would have a really good understanding of how to be a good citizen in terms of sustainability. And one of the positive things was that they would have assemblies. They would do an assembly on their doorway, and that was a really good way of getting parents. So you know, I would talk to the parents about, you know, are you cutting down on showers, are you turning televisions off, are you turning the lights off, and so on. So it was a really good opportunity to have a nag, because it's not just about your own carbon footprint in school, it's about what's going on in the wider world, and by educating parents as well as what's going on in school, I think has a huge impact. And so, for example, one of my proudest moments, nothing to do with energy, more to do with fair trade. I was in an aisle at Sainsbury's, and I heard a little girl say to her mum, we've got to go and buy fair trade tea. And when I looked, it was one of my children. She was only year 1. So how, you know, what an impact that is. You've got year 1 children telling their parents what to do. So so that's a great way of you know, children knowing they have to have short showers, they have to turn off the telly, they've got to turn off lights, all those kind of things. So already you're having a little bit of impact outside of school. One of the things I used to do, I know it's a very simple thing, but I used to walk around the school at the beginning of every morning and turn off all the lights. And that's, I know it's just, it sounds stupid, but it's what you need to do, because you can nag, but you have to keep nagging. So you're the big champion, so turn off the lights. I know it can be easy to ask children to do it or other adults to do it, but there's nothing like you doing it yourself to make a difference. Other things we did with our eco team, we would have a weekly eco award. So the eco team would decide what they wanted to look at that week. Could it be, are the lights going off at lunchtime in the classrooms? Are they turning off the touchscreen TV? Are there, at the end of the day, are children drinking all the water in their bottles? Are they picking up the litter in their classroom? All those kind of things. Because children love a competition and they love an award assembly. So if you can tie up the two things, it's quite exciting for them. And it also gives something, an opportunity for the eco to have an impact on what goes on in school. We also do a huge musical once a year with 4, 5 and 6. We take over our local theatre, and we usually do things like Yanomamo. I don't know if you heard of that. Ocean, which looks at the rainforest problem in Brazil. Ocean World, which is obviously about plastic in the ocean, and again that hits not just the children, but it hits the big audience of parents that come along as well, so that they learn about what they should be doing as well. So in order, with regard to our own carbon footprint in school, these are some of the things we've done. So for example, in 2008 we built a nursery, and I insisted that it should be a sustainable building. So we had a ground source heat pump installed, and for that we had to have huge slinkies across the school, built it underneath the school playing field. And so that gives us underfloor heating. So the only thing we have to pay for is just a pump that pumps the hot water around. So that was one of the things they did. But within the nursery, we had things like recycled carpets and doormats. We had recycled insulation, lots of glass, because that cuts, they don't have to turn the lights on, and so forth. We turned the landfill, we used the landfill that came from the foundations to make a play area, so it didn't have to go to the local recycling site. So, and that's worked really well all over the years, because it's a bit of a concern when you put in new technology, is it going to work? But so far it's been fine for all those, was it 12, 13 years? The other thing we did when our boiler packed up, we used to have an oil boiler, and we decided to go with a biomass boiler. So, and again, that's worked very well. We get really good, we've got really good feed-in tariffs from that. But I believe how we did it was Siemens have lent us the money for 25 years, but in all that time we get feed-in tariffs, so the offset the rent we pay and the feed-in tariffs, it works out very well for us. It's not so very expensive to pay for every month. We also have solar panels over a great number of the nursery roofs, and school roof. And the way we did that, we applied for grants. So we have something called Green Redeem in our area. So we got a grant of money to pay for that. We got money from Tesco's to pay. Also, our first set of solar panels, you know, the small tiles within the bigger solar panels, we sold tiles to our parents. So the parents paid for a small tile, and so that made up for a bigger, that made up a whole roof full of solar panels for us, and so the parents weren't paying loads of money. I mean, we were lucky enough that we've had our solar panels for a long time, and therefore the feed-in tariffs are quite generous then. I don't think that the government is quite so generous now, but anyway, it all, whatever you get is all a help, isn't it? So what was it? So other things we do are things like, I mean, they're nothing to do particularly with energy, but it just might be interesting for people to hear. We have a recycled fashion show every year where the children produce 2 costumes per class, and that's a great, you know, it's a great thing for children to do. They love it, so it emphasizes recycling. Children in English lessons, the children write to MPs, you know, about renewable energy or plastic in the ocean, so that incorporates English. We have for travel and traffic, we had a happy shoes day, so on Tuesdays the children could wear trainers to school, and that would all help with they would have to cycle or walk to school. We do Wear It Wild to help the Wildlife Fund, and finally we take part in Earth Hour, which is so that people will learn more about conserving energy. And I've lost count with how many green flags we've had. So we've been doing it, we've been doing sustainability for a long time, and it's very enjoyable for children. It's not a bolt-on. It's something they love learning about, and also it's very empowering for the children because they find out what they can do. So it's not, I'm scared because I think we're, you know, the world's going to get hotter and hotter, but it's, the world's going to get hotter and hotter, but this is what I can do about it. This is what I'm going to try and do. So that's us. Thank you.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Patricia. And amazing how you do sort of use the wider community and parents. I love that idea of funding a tile per solar panel. That's fantastic. We're now going to go on to hear from Rob from Cheney Secondary School in Oxford, which is a large comprehensive of over 1,600 pupils. They are also one of the first schools to be granted the energy conscious organisation status. So I will now share some slides, and Rob, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Now, have we got the slides? I think we've still got Alex's view. There we are. Perfect. So if you just move on to the next slide, thank you. So we are a large secondary school. Here are a couple of our beautiful buildings, which are, shall we say, accidentally well ventilated. So it's great for COVID, but it's an absolute nightmare ecologically. But despite the quality of the buildings, which are, the one on the left in the big picture is 1970s, the one on the right is 1950s, they are past the end of their life. Despite that, we've managed to reduce our carbon footprint by about 35% over the last 5 years. So what I'm going to be talking about isn't anything kind of, you know, super exciting. It's all really boring contracts and organizational stuff. but which has saved us a huge amount of money and has also cut our carbon footprint. So next slide, please. So what I've got on the slides is just basically showing the reduction that we've achieved over the last 5 years. So it has to be said that 2021, that's a bit of a cheat, because obviously because of the effect of lockdown. So the real reduction over 5 years, probably not, in all fairness, 51%. The other thing that you should know about this is that for a while our large boilers weren't working, so we had a hugely wasteful temporary emergency electric system, which has artificially lowered the gas consumption. We hit the boilers with a hammer, and they're now working again, so our gas consumption is probably going to increase somewhat, but the electricity will reduce. So next one, please. We're starting to look at the electricity now. So this is the consumption. So that's the electricity consumption. You can see that this has reduced much less than the gas, but that's because of the emergency electric heating. But we are still quite significantly below where we were 5 years ago. Next, please. What we do have, a bit like Patricia, is we do have solar panels on the roof. In a second, there'll be a slide of how much they produce. It makes up about a quarter of our consumption. Obviously, a lot more during the summer. It's only that much because our roofs, quite a lot of the older buildings, are basically full of asbestos, and we can't put solar panels on them because of the risks. If we ever get the money together to refurbish the buildings, we will be looking at it. Now, these are not owned by us. This is a different model. Rather than getting grants to install them, and so they're run by us, they were installed for free by the Oxford Low Carbon Hub. So they belong to a local NGO who, someone's going to ask me difficult questions about exactly how it works, but basically we buy the electricity at cost during the school day, and they get the feed-in tariffs for all the other generation. I think that's how it works. So it saves us a bit of money, and it also saves quite a lot of our carbon footprint from the electricity usage. Next, please. So this is generation. Obviously, it depends on the sun. So, you know, last year, not quite as good as the year before, but it's a very useful useful addition. So that's how much we produce in kilowatt hours per month. Next, please. So the way we've done it basically is through cutting out waste. So we have been working with an organisation called Reduce Your Use. And we have smart meters. So there are smart meters installed which monitor in some detail. So this is a screenshot of the smart meter for one of our buildings. This is the old 1950s building. It's called the Wainwright building. And you can see the big lumps in each of the days is basically the daytime use. That's when classrooms are in operation and so on and so forth. But you can see there are a couple of anomalies. The bit that's ringed there was a letting, so that was out of term time, and whoever it was that hired the building didn't turn stuff off overnight. You can see there's a huge overnight load, so effectively everything was left on during that letting overnight. Now, how did we sort that out? Well, we basically got our site team and our cleaning staff on site. And we had a little competition. Patricia said that the kids love competitions, so do our adults, to cut the footprint of the areas they worked in, percentage terms, because if you're working in one of the older buildings, obviously it's much less efficient, but by percentage terms, and that had a huge effect. The cultural effect of our cleaning staff and our site staff, making sure everything is turned off, at the end of the day means that you can see this pattern across all of our buildings. You've got the base load is relatively low, and you can see where the use is, and the use fits during normal school operating hours mainly, and we can tell if there is a problem which we need to address to do with something being left on when it shouldn't be. Next stage, getting kids involved and turning into a house competition. So that's coming up. Haven't quite worked out how to do it, but that is on the menu for extending this sort of thing to the kids as well. So there we are. That's effectively how we did it. This is all very boring kind of back office stuff, and it's not. We do plenty of stuff with the children, with the curriculum and things a bit like Patricia was saying as well. But this use of smart meters and reduction in waste has cut our carbon footprint by 35% or so, and also the bills. And with what's happening with the energy price over the next year, that is going to be a deeply attractive proposition to all of the school business managers out there. That's it, really. Thank you very much.
Amazing, thanks so much, Rob. And it is actually really important, like you highlighted, just paying attention to your energy usage and cutting out that waste. It really does save a lot of money and energy. If anyone has any questions, please do put them in the Q&A box for Rob or Patricia, and I'll hand over to Alex because I think she might have some.
Yes, we've had quite a few questions come in. So, Rob, it's not boring stuff. This is the exciting stuff. And I love an energy data graph. Everyone does. I'm sure Claudia is going to talk about the wonders of energy data in a bit. It's fantastic. It makes the invisible visible. You can see what's going on, what you're using that you wouldn't know otherwise. So, yeah, that's the exciting stuff from our side of things. So a few questions. So I'll sort of dish them out a bit to start off with. First question to Patricia. So, as a governor who's also been a head teacher and worked in a school, what's your advice to schools where they may be struggling a bit to get the governors on side? Because we know that sometimes happens. What's the best thing, what's the golden nugget that they can say to their governors that's going to get action straight away, in your opinion?
I suppose you can divide it into two things, which is about supporting children's learning, but also about saving money. So depends on, I suppose you want to gauge what kind of governance you've got. So I mean, if it's about supporting learning, anything to do with sustainability is definitely supporting children's learning. It's so easily embedded into the curriculum, and it's about them becoming good citizens. So and also we haven't had an Ofsted for quite a while because we were outstanding, but I remember the last Ofsted we had, they were very impressed, you know, that we were doing sustainability, because at the time nobody was. So it was an impressive thing to talk about as well. It gives you a little bit of an edge over other schools. And then also in terms of saving money, you clearly are saving money if you've got solar panels. You're clearly, if you get a biomass boiler, and you get feed-in tariffs, I mean, you've got to get a boiler. You know, if you're getting a boiler, you've got to get a boiler, and the best way and the cheapest way to get a boiler, and also to be working towards a zero carbon footprint. You know, you can't fail, I think. We just happen to have really good governors. I don't know. Some schools that you don't even need to persuade them. They really understand it. So that's great to know, and it's nice to see the relationship that's there with your governors and your staff. So with all the different technologies, one of the important things to know is that prices go up and down. The different incentives, loans, grants, schemes all go up and down. So it's always worth checking. So maybe if you even as a school, if you looked at solar panels or a ground source heat pump or something like that, even if it was only 6 months ago, it's actually probably worth looking at it again. It's always worth, there's so many variables it's worth looking at. So I mean, Rob, solar panels has never actually cost us any money because we've always had grants or people pay for it, and then it's a win-win. So
There's so many
not
different
with that.
options, different ways to do it. So it's always worth looking into. So Rob, question for you. So how did you reward your cleaning staff and your site staff when you were doing the competition? What were you rewarding them with? Was it money, chocolates? How did you do it?
So first of all, it was a straight up competition that it got their imagination going. There was not a, it was felt to be a bit unfair by giving a major, monetary bonus to people. So it was done through, relatively small prizes, the sort of box of chocolates type thing. But mainly, they understood it. They understood it really quickly. They were completely on board with it, and the element of competition that my block is best actually worked. It works for year 3. It works for adults as well.
Yes, I think there's always a bit of natural competition, and peer pressure can do wonders, doesn't it? And another question for you, Rob. Your energy conscious organisation status. How did you get that? What does it mean? What did you have to do to get that?
So apparently it's us and Rolls-Royce in the UK at the minute. So it was Reduce Your Use, who is the lady consultant called Wendy Cheeseman, who has been working with us for the last 5 or 6 years. She was the one who put us onto it, and it was effectively putting in a submission using the 5 or 6 years worth of data, showing the continual reduction and the reduction in wastage. So effectively, what we did is we shared those energy usage graphs. Lots of them went into it.
Excellent. And so we've got time for a few more questions, or shall we? I think we might need to move on to Claudia, and then we'll come back to more questions at the end where you can quiz all 3 of them at the same time. So Suzanne, I'm going to pass over to you, who's going to introduce Claudia.
Amazing, thank you. So we've got, amazingly, Claudia Towner here, the CEO from the Sustainable Schools charity Energy Sparks. She has worked for Energy Sparks since the project started in 2017, and has previously worked for the Environmental Agency, but then also worked in education management and developing good understanding of the challenges involved in implementing energy saving education activities and operational and infrastructure changes within schools. So I'm very, very pleased that Claudia agreed to join us here today, and hopefully she'll inspire you guys as well. And over to you, Claudia.
Thank you. So thanks for inviting me along today. Energy Sparks provides an online school-specific energy management tool and education program to support schools with reducing their carbon footprint. Energy Sparks started in 2017 in the Bath area with the aims of democratizing access to school energy data, driving motivation to make savings, increasing energy and climate literacy, and supporting students and staff empowerment to reduce their school's carbon footprint. We were fortunate to attract significant grant funding from the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy to develop our tool and extend our work across the country. We now work with over 260 schools across England, Wales and Scotland. And at the moment, thanks to our charitable funding, we're able to provide Energy Sparks free of charge to all participating state schools, with independent schools paying an annual fee. Using a school's electricity, gas and solar data, if you've got solar panels, from your smart meters or other half-hourly monitoring systems, Energy Sparks shows pupils, staff and volunteers how much energy the school is using each day. Our unique online tool presents bespoke analysis of the energy data with suggestions of actions the school community could take to save energy and reduce the school's carbon emissions. We provide school user-focused dashboards which aim to put energy use into context for both adult and child users. Our dashboards not only summarise the school's energy use, but present energy alerts and action prompts to support users to tackle energy waste at school. We use colour to highlight when schools use energy. Often the easiest no or low cost opportunities to cut consumption are to reduce energy use during the school holidays, coloured in red here, and at weekends, coloured in yellow, when school buildings are generally empty. By simple behaviour change and heating control changes, schools can often cut 20 to 30% off their energy bill. Charts can be marked up with steps taken by the school to reduce consumption, helping users to see whether their interventions have made a difference. We link energy analysis with over 100 pupil activities to support students taking impactful action to reduce consumption. These activities support learning about climate change and the reduction of carbon emissions, investigating energy use around the school site, taking action to reduce energy use, and spreading the energy saving and carbon reduction message across the wider school community. When schools carry out activities, they're encouraged to record what they've done on the Energy Sparks website, sharing best practice and providing inspiration to other schools. For each activity recorded, they earn points for their efforts, which goes towards their position on the Energy Sparks scoreboard. We provide weekly email alerts and action prompts, informing users when their consumption changes and the cost and carbon implications. We focus on recommending no and low cost interventions, which have the potential to reduce the average school's consumption by about 30%. But we also provide guidance on the likely payback of capital interventions, such as installing solar PV. We also provide a school comparison and benchmarking tool to allow portfolio analysis of schools in local authority or multi-academy trust groups or across the whole Energy Sparks portfolio. And we compare performance against a range of benchmarks, including per pupil and per floor area, school holiday consumption and heating start time. Participating schools that engage with the advice offered by Energy Sparks can expect to save around or at least 10% off their energy bill in their first year of engaging. This represents a cost saving of around £2,500 and probably increasing with the big price increases in energy, and around 8 tonnes of CO2 for an average 2-form entry primary school. Most engaged schools have achieved savings of up to 30%, typically by addressing 3 main areas of waste: holiday use, weekend use, and boiler start times. Participating students and staff also learn energy saving and carbon reduction life skills, which they take home to their families and communities. So now I'm going to share some of Energy Sparks' top energy saving recommendations for schools. With the Easter holidays fast approaching, it's an ideal time to cut heating related energy waste. So switch off your school heating and hot water for the holidays. Secondary schools could often save up to £5,000 just over the two-week Easter break, and many primary schools could save around £500. If you have holiday lettings, use zoning to make sure you only heat those parts of the school that are used. And if your heating system doesn't have zoning, turn off radiator thermostats in those classrooms which are unused. Just be careful about turning off radiator thermostats in the area where your main heating thermostat is. Otherwise, you could confuse the heating system. Another area where you could achieve big savings is by looking at your boiler start time. This chart shows the aggregated gas consumption over the last 2 months for a primary school in South Wales. You can see that the heating comes on at 1 AM every day. School heating comes on too early in the morning at many schools. Many schools have optimum start control configured, which looks at the outside and inside temperatures and automatically schedules the heating to start earlier in colder weather and later in milder weather. But unfortunately, at most schools, this doesn't work properly and is the cause of heating coming on too early, mainly because the boiler thermostats are in the wrong place, in drafty school halls or corridors. So though the corridors might come up to temperature by the time the school opens, the classrooms have wastefully been up to temperature since the middle of the night. We generally recommend, if this is the case at your school, that you turn off optimum start control and try switching to fixed times. So perhaps set the heating to come on at 6:30 a.m. and see how it goes. Another issue with optimum start control is that the time you set in the boiler controller is the occupancy time and not when you want the boiler to turn on. So you should typically set it to perhaps 8:30 a.m. on the basis that you want the school up to temperature for 8:30 a.m. and not, for example, 5:30 a.m. in the mistaken belief that this is when the boiler will come on. If you set it to 5:30 a.m., all that will happen is that the optimum start control will start the boiler earlier to get the school up to temperature for 5:30 a.m. And this is perhaps what's been going on at this school in South Wales. If you're reliant on your boiler service engineers to configure these settings, you need to be quite firm with them and communicate your school's focus on reducing your carbon footprint. Addressing your electricity baseload or the electricity used by lights and equipment left running all the time is another easy way to cut your carbon footprint. Get your students involved in a survey of all the equipment left running continuously at your school. Don't forget fridges, freezers, hot drink boilers, water chillers, and ICT equipment, particularly servers. Use an appliance monitor, which you can get on Amazon or other similar retailers for about £15, to monitor the standby power for any equipment that's left running all the time. Then use traffic light stickers, as was mentioned earlier, to mark up the equipment that can be switched off by students. Also create a pre-holiday switch off checklist for your caretaker or other site staff to make sure that things don't get forgotten in the pre-holiday rush. So what extra help does Energy Sparks provide schools that are participating on our programme? So we can provide funded in-person or virtual education workshops, assemblies and in-school staff training in many areas of the country. We can also provide funded virtual one-to-one energy audits to support your school with developing an energy action plan. We provide induction training and focus training for eco team leads and facility staff on using Energy Sparks. We provide email and phone support, regular newsletters, and at the moment we're developing a new school travel carbon footprint tool. If you're interested in signing up your school to Energy Sparks, please visit our website and have a look at our enroll instructions. I provided the link at the bottom of this slide. But in summary, you need to email hello@energysparks.uk, confirming your school details, but also providing details of your energy supplier for both gas and electricity, and whether you purchase through your local authority, a framework contract or a broker. We also need participating schools to nominate an Energy Sparks champion. So that's the lead adult who's going to champion energy saving and engagement with the Energy Sparks tool at your school. That individual will get an account setup link to set up your Energy Sparks account. So hopefully some of you watching today or watching afterwards will be interested in joining Energy Sparks. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Claudia. That is really the work you do with schools, both the supporting and then the magic behind with the numbers is really, really great to see, and really encouraging to see that there's some really nice simple solutions out there, and they can work. And we all know about, you know, just the solution to this is just turning stuff off. So you all now know that when you're leading up to school holidays, you've just got to go around, do that walk around. And every Friday before everyone leaves, make sure there's that walk around. There's so much energy wasted in the evenings and the weekends and in school holidays in schools. I heard a scary stat that it was 60% of the energy that schools buy is actually just wasted out of school hours. So everything that we can do to cut that is really important. We've had a question in the chat asking about how you can look to audit and plan out your actions and what to do. So in our webinar last month, we had one of our speakers from Global Action Plan came and joined us and talked about their climate action planning tool. There's a really great tool on the Transform Our World website. It's a climate action planner, and it's there to help you work out what to do now, what to do next, and to plan your action. So do take a look at that. I'll put the link in the chat, but you can find it through the Transform Our World Global Action Plan website as well. But that's a really good way to manage it, and especially if you're looking at it from a trust from many schools, you can do it sort of collectively all using the same tool. And of course it's free, as so many of the points of support are out there for schools. So a question which actually I'm going to just open out to all three of our speakers is about what is the best thing when you want to engage not just with the parents within the school but out into the community. And have any of you done that, where you've gone beyond the school gates and the households and out into the communities, and what's your advice and what have you done that's worked? So is there anything either Patricia or Rob or Claudia that you've done that you want to share? So while they're thinking about that, I will tell you about a school that we've worked with down in Kent on the Isle of Sheppey, and they had the children writing leaflets about how you can save energy, and they then beautiful artwork, and they created all these messages and put lots of numbers in there to say what the savings are, and then they went and shared them with the businesses and the local community to say, hey, have you thought about turning off your lights and equipment when you go home at night? Have you thought about doing all these different things? So there it was about persuasive writing, and it was about using artwork and engage with the community. So that was a really nice example that I saw in one of the schools in Sheppey in Kent. And Rob, did I see you coming in there with something that your school has done?
Well, I've got 1,600 of so we actually have quite a lot of community in school. We find that as a secondary school, people aren't that interested in what we say, which is rather different to primary. Primary has the school gate community in a much more powerful way. We don't. So we find that the most effective thing is I would like to say that all the parents are hanging on for my Thursday afternoon leadership update email, but I know that they're not. Our most effective thing is the kids. And bear in mind, of course, that what we're doing is we're creating the next generation of adults. They leave here knowing something and having those that core ethical, non-wasteful attitude, and that's going to make a huge difference later. So in other words, our main outreach is being a school.
I think that's really powerful, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, we're the same really, because I think, as you say, I mean, our parents are the community, so I think hitting the parents is very important. And one of the things I would say to the children is it's the only time that you can nag your parents is about sustainability issues. You can nag them about that. So
and you're allowed to nag your teachers as well about it.
Oh yeah, but things like the assemblies that you probably don't do in the secondary school. The parents coming to children's assemblies and hitting the parents there, not only with their own children sending a message. I mean, we've done things like the plastic straws. When we had an assembly about that, everyone said, right, we can't have plastic straws anymore. Or we've done assemblies on you know, the fashion industry, and out of that people said they're going to buy more secondhand or not buy so many clothes, or we've done assemblies on food waste to make children think, and so on. So you can really get, you know, get the guilt trip going just by having an assembly. So definitely worth it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valuable lesson, the power of assemblies. And somebody once said to me, you've got to remember, in that assembly, if it's a normal school assembly, you're not just getting that speaker to come and talk to the students. All the staff that are standing around the edges, they're also listening and they're absorbing it and they're learning as well. So there's all these different ways that we can share the knowledge. Now I'm going to, before we finish off and we just explain about our future webinars coming up, I'm going to show you my best bit of technology about energy saving. This is super high tech, and you can buy them in everywhere, including the pound shops and places like that. And it means that you stop relying on whether somebody is cold in your school, and you start relying on real facts and real numbers and what the actual temperature is, and whether somebody's just feeling a bit chilly and doesn't want to put their jumper on. So start sort of managing the heating and the way that you heat the building in an effective way. And Claudia there talked about cutting the timings that the heating's on. If you just nip it by 15 minutes on either end over a whole winter season, that's a big change, and that's a big impact. So all those little things really do come together and make that change happen. So I'm gonna, Suzanne's now going to explain about what we've got coming up in our next workshops, our next webinars.
Amazing, thank you, Alex, and thank you to all our speakers today. Actually, it's just so great to have you come and tell us real life stories of what you've done in your schools, but then also, Claudia, of how you as an organization support schools in making those changes. So it's really amazing having you here. We've got a couple more webinars lined up for you. One just after the Easter holidays on Thursday, the 28th of April, and all our webinars are at the same time. So 4 o'clock till 5 p.m. after school time. So hopefully you can all attend. Our webinar on Thursday, 28th of April is on governance, and we're looking at the Department for Education's new climate change and sustainability strategy. We're focusing in on this because the Let's Go Zero campaign and our policy asks, we have a big push on it, but also the strategy is going to be released a week before, on the 22nd of April. So do, keep an eye out for that release and have a read and look through it, but then come along and hear about it through our webinar as well. And then to follow, we've got a second webinar on Wednesday, the 18th of May, focusing on student engagement and empowering students to take action. And that will follow our traditional webinar sort of series of having schools come and talking, and then hopefully have an organization on how they can support you doing that. But if you do have any questions or ideas for future webinars that you feel will be useful to you and your school, drop us an email, because we are always interested in how we can support you. We don't want to just tell you what to watch and listen to. Yeah, thanks.
And just to say, so all the webinars, we record them and then they go on the website. So where you sign up, you register to join the webinars, that's where we put the recording. So please do share them with as many people as you'd like to. We'd love lots of people to be watching them, and do get in touch if you have any specific questions or anything following up from watching the webinar. Do get in touch, even if you're watching this in a recorded version months from when it was done. If you do have any questions, please do get in touch and engage with the campaign. And if you're not signed up, get your school signed up to Let's Go Zero, join the Energy Sparks campaign, and let's get action happening in the schools. So thank you very much everyone for coming, and it's been a pleasure, and thank you again to our speakers.